Next in the shotgun seat for Falling Forward episode. I don't know which number this is. This is Glynn Woods from, where are you from?
England.
England.
Northwest England.
Northwest England. And he and I met I was playing some shows out there on a little tour that I did with Jack Browning. When was that? Like, I think maybe April. It's April sometime.
April, around Easter, Good Friday.
So we were playing a show, and you came out and did and shot some photos for us.
Yeah.
And so, what was the main motivation for coming out to the States?
Just to get to see the country and stuff like that. Somewhere that I'd always wanted to come.
Yeah.
But I suppose never really had the chance to and the opportunity.
Yeah.
And then the same as you said, like from meeting at the gigs, with stuff like that, doing bits of photography, so meeting up with you, connecting, stuff like that, keeping in contact over social media.
Yeah.
Then there's another couple of guys who'd come out, Mike Nelson and Jimmy Stanley, did a similar thing like the month later. And the same, like I say, went through with that and then kept the connections open and the conversations. And as you kind of graciously said, like I say, if you ever want to come over, there's always someone there for you. And
yeah, it was kind of like
there'll always be a bed.
Yeah, like paying it forward, because that's the only way that I was able to go to England and Wales is because of Kat and James Deed.
Yeah.
Where they opened up their home to me and they were able to drive me around and go to different shows. So I believe in paying it forward, man. And you came to the show, you shot some great pictures, and what things in your life ended up to the point where you're a photographer? You got some other things going on, but let's start there with how you get into photography.
Photography it's probably been 10 years, 15 years. Not, I suppose, even photography, taking pictures.
Yeah.
I suppose, and started with that, and always liked kind of the idea of taking photos, but didn't really have a clue with cameras and this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then a friend got me kind of into that. You know, it was like, oh, we'll start with this, and it's not really the camera, and get a cheaper camera, and you can upgrade your lenses and bits like that. So started from that, and I took photos, just general. You know, we'll go on walks and nature and buildings and landscapes and everything like that, but not really done anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was through the music and stuff like that, and we've got like loads of mates back home who are musicians. That was like, oh, want to kind of do stuff, and so we'd started doing that and just taking it, because I'm always at the gigs anyway, and just taking a few photos, and it went along. And then through one of that, as we was with Stevie O'Connor, who was kind of on the writers round with yous, taking photos for that, and then the same sort of thing. Go, well, why am I here? I may as well take photos of the other guys that you kind of don't know. It started from that, so we did like whatever it was, like 3 photo shoots, if you like, in that kind of weekend. Then when you was at the barbecue bus the day after, went through that, so it ended up on the Sunday of that weekend. We was at a mate's kind of like other gig that he was putting on. So just trying to sort through some photos to get bits back to you, because I'm like, there's no point the timeline being that long between it, and then you kind of, here's your photos from when you was over 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it went through that, and basically I was just starting stuff out with that as a mate was playing at that gig, and the guy who'd put it on was like, oh, could you just take a few photos with your phone? So I was like, oh, well, actually I've got my proper camera with me. That's when I'm sorting out the photos from that.
Yeah. And
basically that was the start of this evolution of it.
It's pretty cool how that happens, isn't it? Like when you just put yourself out there and attempt something.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, you know, you start picking up jobs.
Yeah.
From that point, and something that was maybe a hobby, now it turns into something different.
Yeah.
To where you're going to gigs just to shoot to document it.
Yeah.
And then you're getting the benefit of hanging out and going to gigs too.
Yeah.
Which you would have been doing anyway.
Yeah, and it's that, as like say, as you say, is it's kind of progressed from that, and then, oh, actually, can we do, and is there this, or do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And as you say, kind of it just opens it up, and at the minute it's kind of more portfolio building.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing you've mentioned before on previous episodes, that putting the groundwork in and sweat equity.
Yeah.
As we always say, you know, and kind of like you're putting all the hard work out there and not getting nothing back from it.
Yeah.
But it's going along, and it's starting connections, and
there's a balance where you're going to be putting some work in, not getting a whole lot of money out of it. And sometimes, you know, ultimately it's not about the money, but if you want to make a career out of it, you got to get paid.
Yeah.
And I think musicians run into that quite a bit too with playing certain venues. Going to, traveling, and sometimes it's going to cost you a little bit even to do that. But the people you meet along the way, the connections you make, you just never know what doors are going to open up because you took the initiative to do that. And so a couple other things, man, like you got to tell everybody about your beard game. Like, you're a barber?
So barber by trade. So been barbering 10 years basically. Had my own shop for 5 now, so it was 5 like this Easter. But as it went through, always been kind of into beards, and cause my beard grows fairly quick, so ended up shaving like twice a day otherwise. It ends up like itchy at the end and like scratchy. So it went through that, and then, like I say, kind of evolved from that into, I suppose it's the same as it'll be with yous and branding and stuff like that. That people kind of come through and like, oh my God, look at your beard, and it starts conversations, or there's bits like that. And the same as it's kind of opened up, as stupid as it sounds, opportunities, and ambassador for a beard brand, Captain Fawcett. So they've got kind of distributors over in the US as well. But just doing bits with them. And
you do like beard competitions and stuff like that?
Sweet. We've done a few. We didn't do like the last one. They have like the British Beard and Moustache Championships. So I missed the last one because we was away. But basically the 2 before that, so 4 years ago and 6 years ago, we came second in that.
Cool.
So that was cool.
That's a big deal. It's great when you have a brand you're representing, and there's a lot of opportunities that can open up because of that too. And you were telling me yesterday about a motorcycle ride that you went on with a lot of your friends, and it was kind of like a mobile show almost.
So it's the Barber's ride. So it started off 6 years ago, and it was kind of like people in the industry, a barber from Scotland, there was a distributor from Ireland, and then Richie, who owns Captain Fawcett. And he was talking about like doing rides and stuff like that, and then the idea came together of, well, if we're doing that, why don't we make it into a charity thing, and we can do like barber demonstrations of a night.
That's cool.
People can buy tickets to take part in the ride. So like I say, we do like a different route each year. So it goes long. This year we did into France, up to Holland, into Germany. Last year we did all around the coast of Ireland.
It's
only about 1,000 miles, 1,200 miles, something like that. And it's like the last, I think, 4 years we've raised for Make-A-Wish Foundation. So the various kind of places where that we've been, the local Make-A-Wish for that. So we've raised, I think this year, it was kind of like another £30,000.
Wow.
So whatever that'll be, $45,000 or something.
And that's incredible because you're out there, you're enjoying yourself. If you're you like to ride motorcycle or get out there and explore and travel, you're going to do that anyway. So you might as well organize something to like raise money for a good cause. And that's what you're doing, man. That's pretty cool.
And it is, like I said, I think to date we've raised, it'll be over £150,000.
That's amazing.
That's gone through, so it can be hard work, and like slog of not much stops, 8 hours, 9 hours in the saddle every day. But it's looking at the same, as you say before, the big picture of it and the end game of it. It's not about what we're doing and whatever, it's the kind of the kids that are having the dying wishes, I suppose, and that are going through a lot harder stuff than what you're doing.
And just like I know how when I had a motorcycle, like a 7 or 8 hour ride was incredibly hard. Because you're like, you got to get up and you got to move around. Well, you're in a big group traveling too. It's not like you can just peel off at any point and stop, take a break, walk around. You're stuck there for a while. Until whoever's leading decides everybody needs to take a break.
Well, there's normally, I think, like mid to high 40s, and that's it. Like say, as you're going along, it tends to be probably more the fatigue of your muscles, if you like, or rather than the actual toughness of it. Because like say, you start off on day 1 and you're hydrated, and then as you said, there's 40 people in that group. The first one can't do anything. I'm normally at the back. I'm kind of like the tail gunner. So everyone has to, doesn't pass me basically. So if we're marking junctions or anything like that, I'm always the last one. So it's the same in that no man's land in the middle. You're at the mercy of everyone else kind of doing stuff, and then you stop for gas. And then you can't just down a load of fluids, because then you need the toilet again, and you know that you're not stopping for another 2 hours. But it's that constant thing that it goes along that you ride until you've got to stop.
There's a lot to it, man.
Yeah.
So you were, speaking of drinks, you know, and hydrating, you're completely sober.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we, you know, when you meet somebody, you're hanging out at a club or a venue, and I was doing a show. Of course, you're like, hey, you want a beer or anything? I'm going up to get a beer. He's like, no, I don't drink. And so you kind of like, you know, made mention that you were sober completely early on when I first met you. And I never knew the background or anything like that of what led you to that point. And if you feel comfortable sharing that, I'm sure somebody gets some benefit out of your experience with going sober.
Yeah. So it was that side of it, like say. So it's been 20 years in November. I'm hitting, and it went along, and the same as you say, kind of drinking socially. You know, and someone said like, oh, well, did you have a problem? Oh, was you alcoholic? You know, and you're like, no, not really. We was drinking, and it sounds a lot when you say it, but like 10, 12 pints a day. Because you go kind of have like a few beers after work, you know, you'd have your 3-4 beers.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go home, you have your food and your tea. And then your mates would text at 9 o'clock saying, we're going to the pub, are you coming out? So you don't say no because you've only had, oh, I've had 4 beers this afternoon, no.
Right.
And it'll be the same, I'm sure, like with you, so you'll have a few beers through the show.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, do you want a beer after the show? You don't like, oh no, I've already had 3. So you do, oh, well, go on then, I'll get you a drink, and then, well, you owe me one, and it just gets in that circle that it goes through, and you end up, like say, each day was probably, like say, 10 pints. Then you wake up in the morning and you feel rough, and then you don't want to drink anything because you feel like upset stomach, and then you get to dinner time and you're starting coming out of it, you know, you're like, oh, I don't feel too bad now. And it'd be the same thing, the guy we worked with, like, going for a beer at dinner. You're like, yeah, I could do a beer now. And then it starts like that, and it was just kind of, like say, got to the point just fed up of being like hungover, didn't need a drink. Cause like say when you say like, yeah, I drink 12 pints a day. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, you see, you're an alcoholic.
Right.
Like, I'm not, I didn't need to drink. It was like say that social thing is the
social
same.
Thing, yeah.
Like say you'll be on the road and you just do that every day, and you're like, you don't need to, you just end up doing.
Right.
So it went through, and the same, like we'd woke up that morning and just, like say, doing other bits as well, which we probably won't mention. But it goes through, and you get into that kind of routine and the thing, and then it was just like I need some time off, so I'm going to do a week, you know. And we'd message like lad who was out with, and kind of like I'm not drinking for a week. And then in my head I was like, well, you can do that when you're ill. If you don't feel well, you take a short break, you know. You're like, I'll go out next weekend, and you do whatever. So it turned into kind of like a personal challenge, I suppose, of like, I'm going to try and do a month. A month's a good challenge. And it went along, and same again, that was basically the start of it. As it went through, it was like the shooting pains in your back, you know, you've got a bad back, and then they go, and you're like, oh, actually that was my kidneys.
Right.
And then you start kind of going through, and you're hydrating because you're not hungover, so you'll have, let's say, fluids and stuff like that. So it went along with that side of it.
So it was a health concern. You're like, I'm getting older, I need to keep these kidneys around.
Yeah, well, it was like, I didn't even realise at the time, I suppose, that that's what was causing the issues. Okay. It was just, it went along, and it was just like, I just want to take a month off, just rather than feeling hungover every day. Yeah. Which like, kind of like, say, led into that, and then after a month, you feel better, and your body feels better, and probably, like, say, get rid of all the toxins and everything like that. So it was like, oh, I might do another month. So, and then, once it kind of went through that, and you like say the hardest part, as you say, is trying to break that cycle with friends. Not going out, but you go out and it'll be the same as a gig, and do you want one of these? And you're like, no, not today. Go on, why don't you just start? Well, I've got you one anyway. And it was just kind of like, well, you can have it, you know, like, no, I don't want it. You're like, well, I'm not drinking it. Mm-hmm. And then the same, by the time you get along, and it gets easier as you go out, and you're like, do you want a drink? You're like, I'm driving, or... Yeah,
everybody kind of knows over time, like, okay, we're going to go out, you're going to be drinking some tea or water or root beer or something else like that.
Yeah, it was. So that turned into, like, say, looking at it and saying, I'm going to give up smoking, like, say, kind of probably 6 months before, just because. Yeah. And then, like, say, wasn't doing drugs, wasn't drinking. So it went, and then kind of, like, looked into it, and then you, like, realise, like, I suppose it's more of a music thing over in the States as well, but the straight edge kind of thing, you know, like the mentality of no drinks, no drugs, no smoking. And it just kind of like, oh. And that was kind of cool. And then, like, say, as it went along, it got to, I suppose, 4 months, and then 6 months. And then when you're like, oh, but you could have one now. Like, actually, I don't want to I don't want to reset that clock to go along to have one and either
Right.
not be able to do it.
You can do a lot.
And
You know,
you drink till you fall over.
yeah, your body can repair itself up to a certain point, and you know sometimes you got to give it a break. And,
Yeah.
But then you start feeling better. I've seen a lot of my buddies that are sober right now, like they within 30 days they feel great.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't understand like how much you weigh yourself down with drinks and smoking and things like that until you stop.
Yeah.
And that's one thing like about this channel. You know, I have like cigar reviews and things like that on there, and I try to let people know it's like if you haven't smoked, don't start.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like maybe I'm making excuses for myself, like
Yeah.
on drinking and smoking and things like that, where I know like the older I get, you know, I'm 46. Before you know it, I'll be 56, and
Yeah.
I want to keep my body in good condition so that I'm around for my grandkids, my kids, and so there's seriously things to think about and consider. It's like anytime somebody goes sober, I congratulate them, and because I know it's going to be good for them. And every once in a while I'll take a break. You know, I'll take a break for a month or something just to prove to myself I can do it.
Yeah.
But it's like in the music industry, it is a challenge because almost everybody's like constantly drinking.
Yeah.
And, so it can be, you know, like hopefully people watching this will be motivated to think twice about what they're doing, whether they're sober or not, whether they stay on the path to sobriety or they want to choose, you know, to be healthier in any way.
It's the same as I was going to say, as you said then, even if it's not, as that was it for me, you go kind of drinking, you realise, you know, like, oh, actually I am better without it when you stop, you know, like it's just that thing. But as you say, I think there's that part of it of, it doesn't need to be all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You can go along, you're like, oh, well, actually, I'm just going to do this, or I'm going to cut down to, if you're gigging every kind of like night, oh, I'll just have same as non-alcoholic beers and stuff like that starting coming up now. Or you've got some like, oh, I'm just going to have one of these, I'm driving, I can only have, and I don't feel it, and like you say, cut it down and have bits of time off, and then just have a couple of drinks, and it makes a difference rather than like say the mental anxiety of, oh, I can't have a drink now, and what happens? I've failed if I do have one.
Right.
You know, and you're punishing yourself just as much through the mental side of it rather than the other, rather than like, oh, actually I've done good and I've not had a drink for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, usually when I start cutting down, I'll switch to something that gives me the same kind of feeling as holding a beer in my hand. Because sometimes it's just that.
Yeah.
It's like having a drink in your hand, and that's probably a sign of like alcoholism over time. Like but if you can replace that with something else, it'll give you the same feeling. So like when I'm cutting back, I'll get a non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
And it tastes just like a beer.
Yeah.
And you got something in your hand, and nobody questions it socially.
Yeah.
If you got something in your hand, they're not gonna be like, hey, I got you a beer. It's like, oh, I already got one.
Yeah.
You know, and it gives you kind of a crutch a little bit.
Yeah.
But yes, there's a lot to it, man. I know, like personally, I've got some changes I need to make, and that's part of this channel, man. It's just like getting your life experiences. Maybe somebody out there's watching the show and they're like, you know what, I probably need to cut back a little bit too, or go sober, or whatever motivates you. But so you're heading back to England pretty soon. You're going to Nashville next. You got any plans while you're in Nashville?
Yeah, so we've probably got another week just over. So we're back to Nashville this afternoon. So we're there for like the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Then from Nashville we're flying out to Florida. Like I say, we're going seeing Ryan Nelson, same as we said who'd come over. He's like putting me up when we're hanging out in Nashville.
Cool.
Then going over to Florida to see Jimmy Stanley, and then they're both playing at Hilton Head Island Jam, I think it's called.
That's gonna be fun.
In South Carolina.
Yeah.
So that should be cool.
That's a good trip, man.
I've been down there, so yeah, Nashville for 4 days, Florida for 4 days, Hilton Head for 4 days, and then fly out to the UK.
That's a great
like
trip,
8
man.
days. So it should be good.
And hopefully we can catch back up. We're working on another tour for England right now. We're trying to get Hunter Flynn, Daniel Kane, myself, Greg Adams, maybe Hunter's brother Fisher to come out and film everything. We're trying to get that organized right now so that we can get out there in February, March, something like that. But definitely we'll let you know. It's been nice talking with you, man. Come back anytime.
And thanks for the hospitality and showing me bits
Anytime,
of the
man.
US already.
That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. That's, you know, it's can't always do that with certain people, but you get a feeling about people when you meet them, and it's like, you know what? Anytime you want to come over, just like, you got a place to stay. And I try to do that as much as I can, especially with traveling musicians and friends, but it makes it so much easier when you have a free place to stay, and you got like somebody there that can like show you the lay of the land and kind of guide you here and there. But man, have a great trip, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.